Liz Harrington is the national spokesperson for the Republican National Convention. She's joining me right now. Liz, good to see you. So the president has, been tweeting this morning, and he has been focusing on Senator Romney, saying in part, Mitt Romney never knew how to win. He is a pompous A who has been fighting me from the beginning. He is so bad for ours. So, Liz, the president going after a Republican senator because he is critical of this so-called perfect phone call to Ukraine, and now inviting China to investigate a political rival, is that how the power of this presidency should be used?
That's not at all what's happening. The president merely raised the same question that NBC News was raising the day before, which was, how is it on an official visit to China, Vice President Joe Biden bring his son, Hunter Biden, on the trip, and he secretly was meeting with Chinese bankers, and 10 days later he magically gets a business deal to have a private equity firm.
Any wrongdoing has not been substantiated. I mean, that has not been confirmed.
Then we should investigate it.
But let's just speak to the issue of inviting a foreign country to interfere with the U.S. elections. Why is that okay?
We should be investigating just that, and that's exactly what Attorney General William Barr and the U.S. Attorney John Durham are doing, getting to the bottom of what, in fact, the Obama administration was doing.
Liz, don't avoid the question. Preceding that, Liz, the president has asked Ukraine to look into a political rival. And there's texting on that. We're seeing the unfolding potentially of evidence to justify the whistleblower's complaint. So the question is this how the power of the presidency should be used? To get a foreign country to interfere or meddle with U.S. elections in 2020.
We have confirmed from Kurt Volker's testimony that there was no quid pro quo here. The favor, in fact, was getting to the bottom of what happened in 2016. This is an issue that Democrats and the media was very interested in not very long ago. How exactly was Russian disinformation infiltrated throughout our politics for over 2 years, pushing an insane conspiracy theory about President Trump and Russia that was completely false?
The intelligence community has already said that Russia did interfere. The intelligence community did say that Russia interfered with the 2016 election. And the challenge has been on the President of the United States to do more with that. And we have not seen any evidence coming from this administration that more is being done to address Russia and now invite 2 foreign countries to involve themselves in this election. What is correct about that when you are sitting in the White House?
He did not solicit foreign dirt on Joe Biden. He merely said, we want to root out corruption in Ukraine. And so looking at corruption, President Trump wants to get rid of it. What was Joe Biden doing when he was point man for the United States, rooting out corruption in Ukraine? His son Hunter magically ends up on the board of Burisma Holdings, making $50,000 a month.
At a minimum, is this an FEC-type violation when the current president is currying favor of a foreign country to dig up information on a political rival?
That is just not what happened. There was no quid pro quo. There was no pressure. Kurt Volker testified yesterday to say Biden wasn't even mentioned.
You see from the complaint and the text that it alludes to that. That is what is at the core of the investigation.
There can be no quid pro quo when there's no quid. Ukraine had no idea that money was being withheld, and it wasn't being withheld because of anything to do with Joe Biden. It was everything to do to see if they were getting to the bottom of corruption, which we know a Ukrainian court ruled
except that
the
you do see in the text
and the Obama administration was soliciting
the envoy is asking for clarification, saying,
in 2016.
Are you sure you want to do this? Are you? Do I understand this correctly, that I'm withholding money because at the president's request for political reasons? We saw that, and then it was a call me. So listen to Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz when he spoke to CNN earlier this morning. Take a listen.
You heard my commentary. What kind of a precedent would we be setting for future elections if the president's requests for foreign assistance in our elections is normalized?
Well, I have to reject the premise of the question. I think that the president's context for these discussions isn't forward-leaning into the next election. He is attempting to solicit Ukraine's support to find out what happened in the last election. It is a retrospective conversation as it relates to the Ukraine. And when you look at Zelensky praising Trump for creating a populist rhetoric that was helpful to him and rooting out corruption, I think you see 2 men who are on the same page, frankly trying to leverage against Europe to get Europe to do more for the Ukraine.
So, Liz, how is this sustainable that it will appear to be normal and okay that a U.S. president can invite other countries to investigate Americans who are in political office or seeking office?
That is not what's happening here at all. It's about rooting out Joe Biden's corruption in plain sight. And what the real question is, in listening, I'm glad you asked that question, because who normalized this? Barack Obama. His Justice Department used foreign dirt.
Who are the other corrupt individuals you're looking into
Christopher
who
Steele
do not
to
have
spy
political
on the Trump
affiliations?
campaign?
He could not answer the question, Liz.
The Obama administration solicited foreign dirt. The FBI paid
and should not
Christopher
continue
Steele.
To deflect. Just deal
That's
with
what
this
happened,
issue
and that's
right
what
here.
we need to get to the bottom
right here. Why is it the president who is asked what other individuals that you suspect are corrupt that you are looking into that do not have any political affiliations? He didn't have an answer. If this is the president who is saying that he wants to root out corruption, why didn't he have other examples? Why does it happen to be the current front runner, his Democratic rival in the race for the White House?
What other Democrats were overseeing attempts to root out corruption in Ukraine? I mean, what other official?
That's not the question. That's not the answer to my question.
It was Joe Biden.
What other individuals of corruption is the president focusing on that have no political affiliation?
He will root it out wherever he finds it. I mean, this is the reason why Joe Biden even came up in passing in this conversation, which, by the way, it's not a cover-up when you release the transcript. If you actually read the transcript, President Zelensky was saying, we've had some bad, corrupt people, we're rooting them out. And President Trump said, oh, yes, I've heard about this, because it's very terrible. And that's what President Trump said. He said, it sounds terrible to me when you have a vice president of the United States running point on corruption, in rooting out corruption in Ukraine. His son sits on a board making $50,000 a month. And then, oh, by the way, the prosecutor looking into that corrupt natural gas company where his son has no prior business knowledge.
Except the chronology is not quite. Your chronology is not quite right. The investigation of corruption actually happened before the newly elected president, and the Obama administration or Joe Biden was helping to pressure the stepping down of a prosecutor because of corruption. And that was in step with the IMF, with other Western leaders, European leaders. So, we just have to get the facts straight, because I think people are getting very confused by interchangeably throwing around information as opposed to keeping the straight line so it's coherent and with clarity.
When you're talking about giving millions of dollars to Ukraine, you're talking about, in the past, Joe Biden withholding $1 billion unless this prosecutor was fired. It's very relevant to the conversation of corruption in Ukraine.
All right. Liz Harrington, glad you could be with us. National spokesperson with the Republican National Committee. All right, a new